You're listening to the Utah Checkdown podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be back with you once again. You get 2 episodes this week. How lucky are you? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're tired of hearing me. But you clicked on the episode, so you're at least listening to me for some reason. We'll see what happens. So, we got a lot to talk about. A few things that have changed over the week since we last aired the podcast. I feel like at this point, anytime I do a podcast, something is going to happen. So I'm undoubtedly... you're going to get some news after this podcast drops, a couple hours after, and we'll go from there. But it feels like that's the curse. I don't know. I don't see anything on the horizon, and now that I say that, I've jinxed it, so we'll see what happens. But first, let me tell you about our partners, UFirst Credit Union. With your UFirst Rewards checking account, you can earn monthly reward points for buying something special for your best friend. Then you can redeem your reward points for something special for yourself. And with no monthly maintenance fees plus free ID check theft protection, you can love that the UFirst Rewards checking is big on perks and peace of mind. Put your checking account to work for you so you can spend more time doing more rewarding things. It's easy rewards checking with UFirst Credit Union. Check out the full details at uFirstCU.com. All right, let's jump into this. So there's been some changes since we last talked. Mostly, the biggest news was what Utah called its College Town Magic, and I'll get into that in a minute and kind of document the decisions around what Utah's trying to do on campus and kind of stuff like that. I'm not going to bore you, at least I hope not, in terms of all the details, trying to give you kind of what is important, especially for athletics and what will happen for Utah. But also yesterday, being Wednesday, the University of Utah finally announced its official press conference for Alex Jensen. So we do get an official press conference. It'll be Monday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day at 6 p.m. This is a different venue for this. They're going to do it at the Huntsman Center. They're going to do it in a way where it's open to the public. So anybody that wants to come in and listen to us media bumble between our questions and ask Alex Jensen and others some questions about this, we're more than welcome to come. So really fascinating opportunity for Utah fans who want to be able to see Alex Jensen and kind of give that support early on, right? Like, this is an opportunity to really rally the fan base around an alum and be able to kind of hit the ground running, right? This isn't, hidden in the shadows that, most press conferences are, where we just talk to the AD and the press, or the new head coach, and some of the top boosters are there. Like, this is an opportunity for anybody that wants to be there to be able to be a part of it. I don't know what will go into this, other than just, being able to see the press conference live inside the Huntsman Center. But I'm curious to kind of see what this does to kind of change the rhetoric around the Runnin Utes basketball program, right? Obviously, we've talked about that many times, where it's just not been it's been stagnant, essentially, right? Like, there's just been a lot of apathy towards the program. There's not been a lot of love. Fans are still showing out, right? Like, people are still coming to the games, but it's still not been the same Runnin Utes program for quite a long time. So you bring Alex Jensen in, that was obviously the number one target that we talked about, and now it's an opportunity to kind of use him to pivot the relation of the program and trying to see if you can kind of get some attention. So now that the Runnin Utes are out of the Big 12 tournament, now they can kind of move forward with some of these things. There's still some things on the horizon potentially, and I'll get into that shortly. But you're now able to essentially kind of move into the next era of college basketball for the University of Utah. So with Alex Jensen doing that, this is always those situations where, everybody wants to know, did he win the press conference? And, you could argue that Craig Smith won the press conference. When he came in, he said all the right things. He said the things that needed to be said to be able to kind of show the support that Utah needed to be able to get them back to the NCAA tournament, to be able to make them back as the Runnin Utes. Craig Smith really heavily relied on trying to get Utah as the Runnin Utes. And that's what he wanted, right? He wanted them to get out, get a lot of have a lot of pace, do a lot of things that way. But press conferences only go so far, so we'll see what happens. But as far as that, just kind of thinking, in my head of like what Alex Jensen could do to give people optimism, beyond just kind of him being there in general. Are you looking for him to talk about the culture? Is he trying to bring back the Rick Majerus culture? And by bringing back the culture, I'm talking about winning, right? Nobody cares necessarily about how the sausage is made. They just want to. I'm not even going to go down that road. That one's a bad example. But we're not going to go there. You just want to be able to see a winning product, right? And so are you going to provide something that's going to be exciting? Is there going to be things that he brings that, get the fan base excited for what he's going to say? Is it the play style? Is it the type of talent that he's looking for? Is he going to invest more in hometown recruiting? Is he going to put a lot of emphasis in the NIL world and trying to be able to get big name stars? What are the things that he's going to say that's going to help? You can sit here and say he's going to lean on Rick Majerus, and I'm not saying that he shouldn't to some extent, but at the same time, like, that does a disjustice to him as well to be able to say that, he's basically just a clone of Rick Majerus and doing what he needs to do, right? Like, he's his own person. He's been away from Rick Majerus for a decade plus. This is his baby now. And so you can kind of pay homage to what Majerus did and the legacy that he led at the University of Utah, but there comes a point where you kind of have to move on, right? And you've got to be able to embrace that while still paying respect to that, and especially you being a player during that tenure, you've got to kind of lean into that a little bit. But you can't get too far where everybody's trying to look at this as a clone, right? I know a lot of people want to replicate that success and they want to replicate what Majerus had, but at the end of the day, Alex Jensen is going to be a different guy, right? He's got the skill sets and he's got the abilities that Majerus, trusted. That's why he brought him on as an assistant coach when he was at St. Louis. And so there's going to be a lot of similarities. There's going to be a lot of things that he can lean on in terms of how he coaches, right? Especially now that he's coaching or is the head coach and not just an assistant coach, he can lean on that stuff. But the reality is he's been in the NBA for, 12-ish years. And so it's one of those things where he's going to look at that influence as well. He's going to look at the NBA game and he's going to see the skill sets that they can provide, the things that those coaches have. He's worked under Quinn Snyder. He's been working in Dallas lately and been able to get some opportunities to learn from different coaching that way. How does he kind of compile all this together to be able to make one unified play style, right? That's what I think we're going to, I'm most interested in learning from him. I want to see kind of where he's approaching this. How is he going to approach the game? Is it going to be inside out? Is it going to be guard play? Are you going to embrace that Big 12, mantra of being able to embrace more guards? Where's his mindset going into this? Obviously, as part of that is, how is he going to, what is his support staff going to look like? Who are the assistant coaches that he has? And with that, a side note as part of that, I don't think we're going to hear anything about assistant coaches until after this press conference. I don't think the University of Utah wants to take any attention away from that. They want to be able to go into this press conference fully embracing Alex Jensen. Not that you can't do that with other people. Obviously, as I've mentioned, Andre Miller is a target, and there's a lot of good talk that he's going to be on staff in some capacity. But at the same time, Alex is the guy, and you need to embrace him. And so you're going to do whatever you can to make sure that he is kind of the focus right now. Yes, you're going to get other names, and whether that's former players or other NBA guys or Big 12 guys or other people that are currently on staff. Those things are going to come. And, that allows you to be able to kind of keep the news in the cycle and continue to keep your name out there. This is kind of an orchestrated attempt to be able to move that along, right? And I'm not saying this is a full orchestration of trying to keep it out there, but I think this is what you want. This is kind of the pinnacle of the announcement, and you want to really embrace in the Alex Jensen era. And so keep that kind of fresh in mind. Go into it with this press conference, and then you can start announcing the details later. as part of that, look, Alex Jensen is still coaching in the NBA with the Mavericks. He's still got responsibilities there, and they've been more than gracious to be able to allow him to do the things that he needs to do to do this. But he's got to finish out a season, and I think that shows his loyalty and just kind of what he's trying to do in terms of finishing out what he started. And so we'll see kind of the next steps. To me, those are kind of the things there. But look, you can go win the press conference, but you've got to back it up, right? And so I think these next few months are going to be pivotal in kind of understanding what he's going to do as a coach. Recruiting will obviously be a big emphasis. How does he recruit the current guys that he wants to keep? I know there's honestly people that he wants on this roster right now that he wants to keep. But to what extent, right? And how much does that play into being able to look forward to other players, right? Going into the transfer portal, going into putting more NIL out there and trying to get that way. What are the things that he's going to do with boosters and the donors and the recruiting front? Where's he going to go? Where's his attention going to be? Is he going to go look more European? Is he going to look more inside Utah, really embrace the Utah Preps or I'm blanking the name on it, but David at Wasatch Academy. There you go. Those types of places. Like where is he going to put his emphasis? So really fascinated to learn all that. You'll get an opportunity to hear it firsthand if you decide to show up to the Huntsman Center. There's great opportunities there. And I think this is a great opportunity for Utah to kind of move forward. So we'll move on from that. We'll get more news next week, and obviously we'll kind of document a lot of that stuff and move forward with it. But beyond that, the only real thing left for the Runnin Utes, last week or earlier this week actually, I talked about there's no real postseason chances for Utah. However, with that said, some things have changed slightly. There's still no NIT opportunity, at least I can't see of one. Looking at early projections from people that kind of monitor this more on a professional basis, I don't see a scenario for the NIT happening. Not that I needed to kind of go digging too much, but that's my job to kind of see what's there. So the only other option now is the CBC, and this is the newly designed college basketball crown. Essentially what this is a tournament of 16 teams that will be played in Las Vegas. Yeah, we already went over this Las Vegas debate. That'll be played in Las Vegas from March 31st to April 6th. Essentially, what it does is it gives 2 automatic qualifiers from the Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12, and then you get 10 other at-large teams. So 16 full teams, like I said. There's no real details on how the seedings are based or how the selection process goes through. For this being a tournament, it really, there's not a lot of details. And so, essentially, based on my research of it, you're obviously going to get the NCAA tournament selections. Those are going to be announced. You're going to then get the NIT announcements. And whether this is concurrent or after or maybe even before, you're going to kind of have a general sense of where some of these teams are going to go. But, Sunday night-ish, Utah will probably know if it's decided to accept an invite to this, if they want to go. But essentially, as it stands right now, looking at it, if it was based on net rankings and kind of where things go, Utah and Cincinnati most likely would be the representatives from the Big 12. There could be more, right? Like as there's at-large teams, more teams could get in. But these teams could be able to play in this college basketball crown. The tricky part here is it's kind of more late in the month. The transfer portal opens up on March 24th. And so far, Utah hasn't had any players unless you count Jaden Teat, but he was dismissed from the program a long time ago, so that's not really news. But he, there's no transfers right now. Now, with that said, the second this podcast drops, I'm guaranteeing somebody will put their name in the portal just to be able to make my life hard, but that's the nature of it. Regardless, you do have that transfer portal that opens up a week before this tournament, and so Utah still has to kind of figure out, is it going to stay together? What kind of things are going to happen? If a guy wants to enter the portal, he still could and still play in this tournament, assuming that Utah is okay with that. But there's decisions here, right? Do you embrace this? My understanding is there's NIL benefits as part of winning this or being a part of the college basketball crown. So there is an incentive to be able to play in this, to be able to kind of keep more basketball teams playing in March. But we'll see. I'm really fascinated to kind of see what this presents, what teams are available, that kind of stuff. But I think, if this is an area where Utah wants to go, this gives them a chance to continue their season. I know some people are just kind of done with the season. I get that, you just kind of want to move on from the era, but there's these players on the team that they want to keep playing, right? And who knows how well Utah could do. We'll see the roster, or not the rosters, the slate of teams that are selected. But it's Utah had a run last year in the NIT and did really well. So all it takes is being able to hit at the right time and being able to have some momentum. Utah obviously has kind of sputtered to the end of this season. It hasn't really gone as well, and so you could argue that it's just better to kind of cut your losses and move on. But I get the sense from this team that they're going to hang on as long as they possibly can. But with that said, the transfer portal is going to open up. That can change things. You're going to have an idea from Alex Jensen on what players that he's targeting and wanting to keep. Does that change the mindset for some of these players who maybe he's not putting a ton of emphasis on them to say he wants them to return, and so they're like, look, I got to go elsewhere. Somebody like an Ezra Sarr is going to take, or he's going to get a lot of attention in the portal, and so if he decides to put his name out there, hitting it early is going to be advantageous for him. That's not to say that Utah's not going to try to keep him, but I think you've got different things that way where there's a lot at play here, where it's not just an easy, we'll play in this tournament. There's a lot going on. So curious to see what happens there. If Utah goes there, good for them. Great opportunity to be able to get more basketball. You get it close to home in Las Vegas. Maybe Utah fans can go turn out and be excited to go down to Vegas. They didn't get that this year with the Big 12 tournament being in Kansas City. But maybe you get that opportunity there and see some other teams that, just weren't quite good enough to be able to be in the NCAA tournament, but maybe good enough to be able to keep things going. So we'll see there. All right, let's transition to something completely different. And this is the University of Utah's plans to essentially reshape campus. President Taylor Randall, over the last, I guess beginning of his tenure, he's really kind of been a visionary president in terms of wanting to be able to have tremendous amount of growth, right? Some presidents, they're focused on different things, whether that's, graduation rates or endowments or different things to be able to, make a broader spectrum of offerings for departments, or degrees or different things that way. President Randall, for the most part, has been really focused on trying to grow the campus, right, and trying to make it a university that is far different than what it was. Still, paying respect to what the university is and kind of the tenets of the university, but really changing it from kind of what it's been in terms of calling it a commuter campus. It's the University of Utah, for a long time, they had dorms, right? Like, it's not like there weren't dorms there, but it clearly wasn't a situation where, you live on campus and you've got everything accessible to you, right? Yeah, everything's within distance, especially if you go down 400 South in Salt Lake. I mean, things are close, right? You're in a downtown city, and so things are close. But there's this the plan that they've unveiled, and this has been, almost, 14 months in the making. I've heard various details about this over the last few months and gotten little bits and pieces of it. But they've tried to keep this, I don't want to say top secret, right? But they've tried to keep this pretty insulated within themselves to try to make sure that they can put this all out at the same time. And with that said, this plan isn't fully shaped, right? Like, there's still plenty of things that they need to do and a lot of studies that need to go into it. But essentially, the focus here is they want to get away from making University of Utah commuter school, right? They want to make it a community school. And by community school, meaning, the students are living there. This is an opportunity for them to be able to have everything at their disposal there, whether that be food or, you've got, medical, you've got whatever it means to be able to live in this community. They want to embrace that and be able to give students an opportunity to be able to live on campus and not feel like they have to go way outside of that to be on campus, right? As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I went to a commuter school, there wasn't a lot of people that wanted to stay on campus. You went to class, you left. This is, there were still online classes when I went. Yes, I'm old, but I'm not that old. There were still online classes, not compared to today where there's a lot more offerings online. But this is an opportunity for students to be able to be involved and be able to stay on campus. So they want to transform what they call it as a commuter focus to a residential, and being able to do that. So as part of that, they want to create a thing called the College Town Magic. That's essentially, they want as part of being able to keep it more as a residential area, they want to be able to keep more things in the campus. So you can stay there, you can do everything that you want to do there, and you feel like as a college student you get your full fix, right? You get entertainment, you get your food, whatever, everything there, and you don't really have to stray too far from campus. They feel like they want to be able to improve transportation, being able to make it so that you can get from one end of the campus to the other in a much timelier fashion. Right now, it's pretty sporadic. Yes, you have tracks that kind of intersect some of campus, but beyond that, there's not really an easy way unless you take a scooter or you walk, right? And so there's these efforts to be able to do that. How this applies to athletics, this is where we get to. The biggest part of this is part of that college town magic is moving the John M. Huntsman Center. The area right there where the Huntsman Center is, that's the area where they've labeled essentially where college town magic is going to be. And what that is they've wanted to create 6 districts, or what they're calling neighborhoods, for different areas. So you're going to have the academic and research neighborhood. You're going to have the health neighborhood. You're going to have the college town magic neighborhood. You're going to have cultural neighborhood, the athletics neighborhood, and then the research park neighborhood. So essentially, you've got these different areas that are going to be part of this quote-unquote residential district of the University of Utah. And so the college town magic area is where a lot of that dormitories are going to be. It's going to be where there's going to be a lot of the, the food. What they say is it's going to be, quote, an infrastructure and facilities that promote a complete community and vibrant campus living for residents and commuters. And so that valuable property right there where the Huntsman Center is becomes kind of ground zero, so to speak, of where this college town magic is meant to be. If you've noticed, a lot of the dorms that they've built are right behind the Huntsman Center. That's kind of been the phase 1 of what they wanted to do. So essentially, the college town magic area would be where that is. You've got all those dorms there. You would take out the Huntsman Center. You'd have more areas there, whether it be food places or other places that allow you to be able to build more campus there, more of a central location where you could host maybe concerts or just gathering places where you feel like you're on a campus setting, right? You want to be able to have that. And that's kind of the central part of campus, the heart of the campus. And so they want to be able to kind of have that as the hub where everybody can kind of be in. And then on the outsides of that is you've got these other neighborhoods, like I said, the academic, the cultural, the athletics, the research park, that kind of stuff beyond that. So everybody's living in this middle, the college, town magic, and then they have everything else there. So as part of that, with the Huntsman Center move, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with this. I tweeted about it to kind of get the general sentiment, and it's frustrating to some. Others are embracing a change. It is an older venue. It's 55 years old, but at the same time, there's a lot of history there. There has been national championships played there, in college basketball and in gymnastics. This is a venue that has, been one of the greatest opportunities for some, the Larry Bird and the Magic Johnson game. Everybody talks about that one. You've got other things, whether it being the national championships for gymnastics. I mean, there's been a lot of opportunities where fun opportunities have been played there, historical opportunities have been played there. In the same vein, the Huntsman Center is old, right? And they've done different renovations to make it better. There was plans that I've talked about how they wanted to blow up the concourse, essentially, put some suites in there, do different things to remodel that area to make it better. But the problem is they're still underneath the Huntsman Center, the framework and stuff like that, the locker rooms and different things there. There's not a ton to work with. And so they haven't really had a great opportunity to be able to expand that area. And that's some of the areas that needs the most. It's also more compact and more tight. Utah loves to be able to host regionals for gymnastics. They want to be able to have more open space that way. Obviously you can go down to the Maverick Center and stuff that way. But at the same time, you want to be able to have a venue that caters to everything in a more modern style, right? And I know, a lot of people want to go look to the modern styles. And I think sometimes you lose history because everybody's trying to do bigger and better and everything. And, that's the frustration with the Huntsman Center, where it's this historical venue that, if you've been a fan of the University of Utah, maybe you've been in the same seats for, 30, 40 years, and you miss that. And so there's some real challenges there, but I think overall they've looked at it and they've decided that they just feel like, with it being an old venue and what they're trying to do on campus, this becomes the best opportunity. And so you essentially use that land now for this, the college town magic, and then you can move the Huntsman Center arena somewhere else. Now, with that said, they still don't have a tentative or a full plan, right? I've heard talks about them wanting to move it closer into the athletic area. And so by doing that, you'd essentially move it down closer into Rice-Eccles Stadium, right? Probably take away some of the parking there at Rice-Eccles Stadium, put a stadium there. You keep it there so you can create still somewhat of an entertainment district for the athletics department, right? You've got now your two mainstays there, whether it be Rice-Eccles Stadium or whatever this new building will be called. Whether it's the Huntsman Center or something else. We'll see. But it's an opportunity to kind of isolate that athletics arm and extend it there. Now, with that said, that athletics arm continues still to the football facility, to the baseball stadium that is being built there on Guardsman Way. So it's not like this fully immersed area. It's still spread out between this stuff, but there's also talk about being able to make it more accessible between that areas, whether it be through sky bridges, walkways, to get from that tailgate area that Utah's at right now for football, down to Rice-Eccles Stadium, to the football facility, those kinds of things. With that said, as part of this college town magic, Utah's John M. and Karen Huntsman basketball facility and the Dumpke Center gymnastics facility, those will stay the same. They're not going to change those. They've invested a lot of money into that. And so as much as there's this college town magic, those things are still going to stay there. But those kind of fit there. Those are where those athletes live, and it allows them to be able to have that's not going to change. So you will still get that, but you are looking for a new area for the Huntsman Center. And if you can do that in the Rice-Eccles parking lot, I understand, as somebody that has to fight parking there every single day when I'm up there trying to, go do interviews and different things, I understand it. I'm very lucky because I'm able to park in different areas that, normally I wouldn't be able to park in, just because, I have the access to be able to do it, and I need to be able to get up there quickly for different things. But I understand the frustration. I remember in college, and my university was far different and much easier, spending, 20, 30 minutes driving around trying to find a parking spot and missing a class. Trying to go to events and you can't find parking spots. It's getting worse and worse at the University of Utah, and they're trying to find ways to be able to do that. And so whether that's trying to find more ways to be able to create parking garages or underground parking or different things to be able to alleviate some of those concerns, those are definitely a part of this situation. They got creative and they put a soccer field on top of a parking structure, right? That parking structure alone has alleviated a ton of problems that Utah's had in terms of getting people to the Huntsman Center. It's still not a perfect case, but you've got that. Maybe there's property around the university that they don't have currently that they can buy to be able to alleviate some of these parking. But on top of that, you can't just continue to build parking lots. That's not necessarily sustainable. You've got to be able to find new creative ways. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to find different things that are going to be, whether it's tracks or maybe more, what's it called in Sugar House? It's S-line, different little things to be able to make it easier where students can commute on campus in a much easier way. Or you can park in a way if you're coming to one of these venues. Football, obviously, you're fitting 50,000 people in there. People have to park somewhere. And anybody that's parked down at that Trader Joe's down or the Chili's down on 4th South, you understand that you're going to get your car towed. So, there's not a lot of options outside of that. And so they've got to find ways to be able to not make it harder for people. They've got to find ways to make it easier while still providing opportunities for the students to be able to maintain, their residency at campus. And so really fascinated to kind of see how this goes. They have a big emphasis to do this by 2030. Whether that comes to fruition or not, remains to be seen, right? There's still a ton that needs to be done. There's still a lot of things that need to do in terms of what they call a capital investment process. There's feasibility studies. They've got to look at the different spacing, what the cost will be to some of these. Building parking structures are not cheap. I was actually talking to somebody that he's building parking structures for a different business, right? This is things that he does. It's not part of the university. Has nothing to do with the University of Utah, quite honestly. But he said, these parking structures are absolutely expensive and they're not cheap to maintain. And so just saying, oh, go build a parking structure isn't always the easiest answer, right? Like if you're going to invest in it and you're going to get, state funds or whatever it may be, that helps. But this is definitely long-term investments needed to be able to do it. So there's still going to be a lot of work. You're then still going to have to get input from your stakeholders. You're going to have your formal reviews, get approval from the right people and all the right places. And then even then, you've got to get some legislative approval to be able to help with state funds. I have yet to hear if any of the state funds or Olympic funds would be used as part of this. Part of this campus magic too is trying to be prepared for the Olympics. Obviously, the University of Utah will play host to a lot of what is being done. I talked to Fraser Bullock, a year or two ago, trying to see if there would be upgrades to the Rice-Eccles Stadium or other areas of campus. And he had told me that for the most part, Utah has done a really good job of being able to maintain stuff. But there's very much so an opportunity where, the dormitories up there could be used for housing as an Olympic district where a lot of these athletes stay. There could be a lot of different things there. And the more you can get this in place and have that, the better, right? If you can get a place where this Olympic community can live, where there's food, where there's entertainment, where there's, a ton of space for them to live, all the more better. And so this becomes a great opportunity for them. Obviously, you're looking for Utah as well in the future in terms of conference affiliation, right? As the nature of conferences are changing, the more you can grow your campus and create it in a way that allows you to be sustainable and have, the right number of students. President Randall wants to get up to 40,000 student base. Those types of things also matter as part of conference realignment. And so this isn't the sole reason. It's not like, okay, Utah's only looking to get into the Big Ten and this is why they're doing that, right? Like that's, they're trying to position themselves in a way that can help that. But by and large, this is more just honestly creating a system where it's not a commuter school, where you get more involvement from the students, where you're preparing for the Olympics. And whether some of that Olympic money will come, like I said, I'm not entirely sure, but that helps, right? Rice-Eccles Stadium absolutely benefited because of the Olympics coming. And so there's opportunities there to be able to use funds, allocated for that to be able to help with the Olympics that can help the University of Utah. Once again, there's legislative approval that has to be done. The legislative session is currently over, and so there's other things that have to, move forward. So whatever plans that they have, at best, unless there's a special session, you can't do anything until next year. So we'll see what kind of happens there. There's a lot of moving pieces here. But there's going to be some changes at the University of Utah. There's a ton already. If you've been on campus, obviously you've seen a ton of that. But they're trying really hard to be able to make this big investment. I think this can be a good thing for the athletics department. I think if you can keep, the athletics venues in a similar area and create kind of an entertainment district there, all the more better for people that want to stay there, right? Whether that's places to go get food or places to kind of tailgate or whatever that may be, this presents an opportunity where Utah fans can be able to have kind of a one-stop shop. The students can have a one-stop shop, and it becomes so much easier to be able to facilitate some of that stuff. So really curious to see how this moves forward. I've heard of different plans as part of this and different conversations being a part of it, but nothing is set in stone yet. But as part of that, if you're going to change the Huntsman Center, the real frustrations that some people have, and most notably that being Red Rocks fans, is that it's going to probably be a smaller venue in terms of seating. Obviously, the Red Rocks, they almost sell out every single time. Those numbers haven't been as high as before COVID, but at the same time, you're still getting at minimum 12,000 people in that arena. And, you want to be cognizant of that. Obviously, if you can get the basketball programs up to the level where they're continually turning out a lot. I mean, Utah, for the most part, especially as it finished late, even though the season wasn't going well, was still filling up that lower bowl. I know there's the jokes about the curtains and everything, and that's Utah's own fault for doing that. But at the same time, fans were starting to show out more. And so, you can't just say that, okay, we're not going to get anybody. But at the same time, you have to recognize that there's this sweet spot of trying to find out how much is seating, right? Is it 12,000? Is it 10,000? How intimate do you want to make it? If you're doing less seating, obviously those ticket prices go up. Are you pricing people out? This is still a college. This isn't the NBA or, NHL or whatever that may be. There's true frustrations there. And one of the biggest appeals for gymnastics is kind of it's a family event. Not that basketball isn't, it's definitely that as well. But this becomes a family event where these little girls and boys, they're coming in and they're watching these gymnasts. Some of them are dreaming of being able to be that person, right? Avery Neff, she grew up coming to the Huntsman Center, being able to watch the Red Rocks in person, dreaming of being able to be one, and now she's fulfilling her dream where as a freshman, she's in the all-around and she's competing. She was the number one recruit. These types of things, you need to continue to get people in. And unfortunately, especially in the professional ranks, some of these things continue to push out a lot of the people that are kind of the bread and butter, right? Like that you can't fully appease everybody, but at the same time, when you start pricing some people out, you lose some of that appeal where it just becomes, this higher level in terms of monetary ways of being able to get people to games. And so you lose some of that support and you don't get support that way. So, you're going to have to listen to a lot of different people and learn what's going to happen. The Red Rocks, they would obviously want to be able to have more seating. But what's that sweet spot? If you can get 12,000, can you still find a way to be able to make that intimate while still being big enough? Is this a situation where, is it too big? Those are kind of the things that we'll have to look at. And I'm curious to see what we get from that. I talked to Carly Dockendorf yesterday to kind of get her opinion on it. She didn't want to stray too far from any opinions on that or anything, but it was clear that, she wanted to be able to have her side, at least the gymnastics side, heard. Whether she'll be involved in that process, I'm sure she will. But, there needs to be conversations had with the gymnastics side as well. And with how dominant gymnastics has been over the last 50 years, you can't not include them. This isn't just a basketball venue. You've obviously got volleyball. You've got other venues that need to go in there. Can this be a modular venue where you can also host concerts, or can it be a place where you can do other things that aren't just, strictly athletics? Those are kind of the things that you kind of have to take into account as you go into this. Are there different things you can do to you make modular seating so you can expand one areas and take away others, allow yourselves, let's say in volleyball, where volleyball, it's just not going to sell out an entire arena, but can you make it in a way where you still have the fans on top of you and you still get the opportunity to be able to have it as an intimate place that's loud and gives that excitement? Those are those things that they're going to have to figure out. First off, they've got to figure out where they're going to put it, right? Then beyond that, then they can figure out the size and that kind of stuff. But this is a multi-year process, things that you're going to do and kind of go from there. So hopefully I didn't bore you too much with that, but I think it's fascinating things going on at the University of Utah. I'm curious to see what happens up there. Curious to see what they do with the Huntsman Center and kind of how long Utah fans will be able to get to be a part of that historical venue. What could be made of that and kind of how this thing goes. So we'll see, but at the end of the day, I know you don't really care about all that kind of stuff. You care about the actual athletics. You want to see a winning football team. You want to see winning basketball teams. You want to see winning gymnastics, etc. You want to be able to see all those things. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. University of Utah, the Red Rocks have a great meet this weekend. It's their final meet of the regular season against their rival UCLA, number 5 versus number 4. Great opportunity to go support those seniors like Grace McCallum, who have obviously done a ton for the university. So a lot happening on the University of Utah still, and we'll continue to document that. Football starts next week, so we'll get into that as well. So with that, we'll sign off today, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and enjoy your time.